Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the AmandaFest podcast, where our mission is simple. It's to inspire and empower our listeners to take aligned action towards their dream lives, whatever that looks like for you. Today is a very special episode. I am going to be doing my first solo podcast, so I am the guest today. For those who don't actually know who I am, my name's Amanda. I am a multi-hyphenate, full-time nomad, podcast host, speaker, facilitator, and creator on a mission to guide ambitious dreamers to connect deeper with themselves, others, and the world around them by tapping into intentionality, authenticity, and play. Today, I'm going to guide you guys through my own personal journey so you have a better sense of who I am, where I've been, and I'd also love to give you a little sense into what I'm building and creating. So, as we've done with every episode, before we dive into this one, I'd really love to take a moment to just drop in for a second, get present, come into the here and now. There's so much energy moving through me right now as I step through this edge in doing this podcast and sharing my story. And so I really just want to take a second to come into my body, get present, so that I can share from a place of groundedness and connectedness. So if you haven't already done so, I invite you to close down your eyes and just get quiet for a second. I always like to put a hand on my heart and one on my belly, just to remind myself that I'm here in this physical body and that I'm safe. And just start noticing your breath, tuning into your internal world. It's a place sometimes we don't always go to. So taking a couple of nice cleansing breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth. With the inhale, I want you to think about an intention or something that you're calling in for this experience. And with every exhale, something that you're letting go of. Whew. So a nice deep breath in. Hold it at the top. And exhale through your mouth. Inhale through your nose. And exhale. And on this last one, feel free to shake it out, make some noise, whatever you need to do to get present in your body. So a nice deep breath in. And okay, welcome. Welcome to your bodies. Welcome to AmandaFest. Wow, I needed that. I really needed that. It's so funny how we can just get so caught up in the external energy of everything. And in order to come back into your body, it can be so simple. It gets to be so fucking simple. Whew, so here we are. As you all know, my intention with this podcast has always been to inspire and empower my audience to take aligned action towards their dream lives, whatever that looks like for them. But before you can do that, you have to know what your dream is, right? If you had asked me a year and a half ago what my dream was, what I was wanting to build, what I was wanting to step into, I was at a total loss. I left my Hollywood job May of 2023, and now we are in October 2024. So it's been a little over a year. But when I decided that I was going to be leaving that job, I kind of had a crisis because I had spent so much of my adult life pouring into other people. My first job out of school, I was working at a talent agency in Hollywood. So I was on the motion picture talent desk for a really big agent working with Hollywood actors, movie stars. And my whole entire world revolved around supporting this agent and helping these actors. This was my purpose at the time, right? This is what I thought I wanted to do forever. Through that process, I ended up meeting who would then become my boss. He is an actor building out a production company, and he and I started building a relationship when I was working for his agent. it was a situation where he almost treated his agent like a manager. So he would be calling him all the time, asking him for support, asking him for help with things. And as the agent's assistant, I would be the one to answer the phone. And so I ended up building a relationship with this actor, and it started out like I would start doing things that he needed his agent to do. And I just started taking on more and more and more responsibilities. At the time, simultaneously, I was also working with Orlando Bloom, one of my old boss's clients, and he had somebody working on his team at the time, this girl Lindsay, who will be on the podcast at some point too. Absolutely love and adore her. But I remember connecting with her early on in my career, and she was kind of like his personal assistant, but way more. Lindsay essentially gave me the blueprint for what I was about to step into with this actor. Um, and what she was doing for Orlando was she was essentially, running his day to day, doing all these things, but she was more of a producer. So she said to him from day one that she really wanted to be super involved in his projects, like actually creatively involved. And I was like, wow, that's a job. That's so cool. I want to do that. So fast forward, I'm now on the desk of this agent building this relationship with this other actor. And he asked me what I wanted to do after I worked at the agency. And I was like, I'm going to come work for you. And he was like, well, what would you do for me? You're going to be way past the assistant level. You can't be my assistant. And I was like, no, here's what I'm going to do for you. And I pitched him the job. And essentially, the way that I describe it now is the job was like CEO of life and business. I was running day-to-day logistics. I was essentially the liaison between him and every person in his life. So when you are a prominent actor or an actor coming up in Hollywood, you have a team. You have a team of agents. You've got a publicist. You've got a stylist. You've got, you're liaising with production for each project that you're working on. And then on top of all of this, he was building out a production company. I had a really great relationship with him. I really believed in what he was doing. And I was like, I would be honored to come and work with you and help you build your dream. Like, how fucking awesome does that sound? And he said yes. And so it took a little bit of time. I was working on that desk for 2.5 years. There were things, there were delays, all of these things. It ends up working out finally. I want to say, when was this? This was before the pandemic. So I think I started working with him May 2019, I believe is when I started. So yeah, so I was so excited. And I saw myself working with him forever. Like, truly, if anybody met me in that period of time, I was all in on building this dream and this vision. I believed in him so deeply. I believed in what we were creating and what we were building. And he was such a great person. And I loved that our whole MO as we were creating this production company and building his like rise to fame. One of the things we would always talk about is that there's too many talented people out there to work with talented assholes. So we always made it our mission first, above and beyond everything that we were doing, to just come at all of the work, all of the projects, all of the collaborations from a really heart-centered space of working with genuine good people and also showing up in that way too. So I learned so much from that experience. It was so unbelievable. Also, just witnessing his drive and tenacity and the way in which he just continued to show up over and over and over again, so many times when other people probably would have given up, right? You get no's, you get rejections, things get delayed, pandemics happen, all of these things. There were so many moments along the journey that I witnessed him stay so resilient and so positive and so determined and so clear that this dream was going to come to fruition, that it was a master class in dream chasing, honestly. And it was amazing. It was a beautiful, beautiful experience. But somewhere along the way, I got lost. I put all of my eggs in that basket, and I was going all in on supporting this dream and vision that he had, that I wanted to be a part of, that I was a part of. Fast forward about 4 years in, I was coming up on the 4-year mark of working with him, and we'll we'll rewind and I'll explain kind of what was happening along the way. But essentially, I started my spiritual awakening. I started having all of these shifts and changes going on internally within me that just changed my perspective and opened up my awareness. And what I started to realize was that I was hiding behind his dreams and his visions because I was afraid of tapping into my own. And not to say that I regret any of that experience, because it was amazing and beautiful and I learned so much. And I'm so, so, so grateful for the time that I had working with him. And it was becoming more and more clear to me that I was desiring to expand and to step into more. And yeah, it was a really hard conversation stepping away from the life that I was living, because it was great. This chapter of my life in working with him was unbelievable. It was the life that I had always dreamed of. I was living in Hollywood. I was going to the parties, hanging out with the celebrities, just everything about my life. If you followed me at that time or you were friends with me at that period of my life was a movie. It was unbelievable. I had my own place in West Hollywood. I had this adorable apartment. I had great friends. I was going to festivals. I was traveling. I had a great job. My boss appreciated me. I was doing something I was passionate about. I loved it. Like, everything was amazing. And this awareness was just like, okay, Amanda, it's time to expand. It's time to grow. It's time for more. And so we had a conversation in December of, was this 20? Oh my gosh. Wow. Okay. So we had a conversation December of 2022. 2022 is a big year when I go back and explain it, but we had this conversation December 22. So 2019, 20, 21, 22. Yeah. Oh my God. Okay. Wow. So December of 2022, we sat down and had a conversation about the future. And to be completely transparent with you, at this stage in his own career, his star was rising and his needs were shifting. So whereas like my job before, he had all of these projects in development and I was super involved and I was on all these creative calls and I was doing all these like really fun, cool, creative things with the job. His needs started to shift and he really was needing more of a personal assistant. And at that stage, 4 years in, I already was an assistant for 2.5 years. It wasn't aligned. We needed different things at the time. So it was a very loving and mutual separation, but it was really hard and really sad. Also, the dynamic of being somebody's right hand for 4 years. I'm gonna get emotional, but yeah, being somebody's right hand for 4 years and wow, talking to them every single day and building something with them every single day and deciding to step away from that, it was really hard. And then on top of all of that, because I'm like a balls to the wall kind of gal, I was like, all right, well, if I'm stepping away from this, like let's shake some more shit up. So at that time, so this is December of 2022, we came up with a plan because I still needed to find a new assistant and train them and all that. So I wasn't going to leave until May. So we were going to have a couple of months of transition, finding somebody new, training them, all this. So I decided in that time as well that I was going to give up my apartment and put everything in storage and do the nomad thing, which sounds fun and cool and amazing, but it was like the hardest fucking decision I ever had to make in my life. Wow, I was not expecting to get so emotional. Yeah, so stepping away from my life, this beautiful life that I built, that I worked so hard to build, it was not easy. And so many people were questioning me. They're like, why are you doing this? It's not like your life is bad. Why are you throwing everything away? For what? And all I could answer to that is I just felt this calling. My soul was screaming at me, screaming at me. It was like, jump, leap, expand. It's time. Go, do it. So I listened. So May of 2023, I packed up my apartment, put everything in storage. I had a one-way ticket to Italy because I had a family trip there. So I was like, cool, I'll start my journey there and then we'll just see where it goes. Yeah, and that was the beginning of that. And then fast forward, I'd been traveling. I did my little eat, pray, love journey. I also was doing my trip around festivals. So while I was traveling, I started in the Amalfi Coast with my family. And then we did Amalfi. I did Rome with my sister. My sister came up with me. We went to Milan, Venice, Lake Como for like a day. Then we went to Amsterdam for a music festival. And then in Amsterdam, we met up with a friend of mine. So it was now me, my sister, and a friend. And then at the Amsterdam leg, that's when I branched off and started doing my own thing. So from Amsterdam, I flew to the UK, spent some time with a friend of mine that I worked at a summer camp with that I hadn't seen in 10 years. And we had this epic fucking reunion. Then I was in the UK for a couple of weeks, ended up bopping to London to connect with another old camp friend that I hadn't seen in a while. And then that turned into a journey to Somerset. She had tickets to Glastonbury Festival in the UK. I'm going to do an entire separate episode about this because it's fucking crazy. But I essentially snuck into one of the hardest music festivals in the entire world to sneak into, literally Fort Knox level, like crazy. So I go to Glastonbury in the UK, and then from there, I went to Portugal. I did a surfing yoga camp there. I went on a yacht cruise around Croatia. I went back to Amsterdam, like met strangers on the street that housed me. This was like total eat, pray, love, magic, surrender, trust. Like, let's let all the fucking magic unfold. Oh, and while I was in Croatia, I also did Ultra in Croatia. So I'm like mapping through the festivals. We did a festival in Amsterdam, festival in the UK, festival in Croatia. And we ended the whole European leg of the trip in Belgium. I went to Tomorrowland. Like, unbelievable experience. But all of it to say, towards the end of the trip, I started to get really emotional because I was like, okay, well, when I get back, like, I got to figure some shit out. Like, I spent 10 years building a career in entertainment that I thought was going to be the rest of my life. And now I'm coming back to the States. Like, reality is going to hit. I don't have a home. I don't have a job. And I don't know what the fuck I'm going to do. Like, I have no idea. So I came back and I bounced around, so I came back, I was in New York, I went to LA, and then in early November, and like couch surfing, like, guys, I'm literally living out of my car, staying with friends, sleeping on someone's couch every 2 days. I'm so grateful and I'm so fortunate. I'm so lucky that I have so many people that love me and that have taken such good care of me. And that's been a huge part of this journey as well, is like really learning how to surrender and trust and allow people to be there for me. Because that was a really massive thing for me in my own journey, where I've always had this extreme independence. I don't need help. I don't need anything. And so really getting to a point where I'm allowing other people to fully take care of me because I need it. This whole journey has taught me so much about that, like trust, surrender, and community, allowing community to hold me, to support me, to be there for me. So fast forward, now we're in California. In early November, my grandfather passed away, and I was getting really exhausted from traveling the way that I had been and living out of my car. It was just a lot. So I decided to come back home to Miami to just ground for a minute with my family and help my mom. I ended up helping my mom, like, some of the funeral arrangements, and then packing up my grandparents' home. My grandma has Alzheimer's, so we were going to move her into a memory care unit. And this was a really, really emotional time for my mom. And I just felt this, like, I had so much healing and things that I have moved through with my mom in the last, in my whole life. Like, a big part of my healing journey has been healing my relationship with my mom. And finally, like, we're in a really good place. And I was like, well, I don't have a job. I don't have a home. I'm available to help. So I just am like trusting all of the signs from the universe and being like, okay, I'm supposed to go back home and heal some more and help my mom. So I ended up helping with that. I ended up moving my grandmother into a memory care unit closer to where my parents live. But like that was a solo mission. My family was out of town and I volunteered to physically go to my grandma's house, like get her dressed and like take her there. So yeah, it was a lot, but also what a gift that I was emotionally and logistically in a place to be there for my family. Because I will say, like years prior, when I was working this Hollywood job, my whole entire universe revolved around this person that I was working with. Not his fault at all. Like it was just the way that I was showing up. I didn't have any boundaries. I didn't value myself at all. I wouldn't make plans with people. I wouldn't plan trips. Everything was like, I don't know. I was just living at the whim of wherever I was needed, whatever was going on. I'm available 150 million% because this is my dream. I was just so blinders on in building this thing, right? That, so all of this to say, since then, I've been using my parents' home as a home base down in South Florida and traveling a lot in between. So in the last, couple of months, I've spent a lot of time in New York City. I've been traveling to Boulder, Denver, Nashville, Tulum, all over the fucking place, just bouncing all around. But coming back home to my hometown was really fucking challenging. I don't want to say I didn't have a happy childhood. I was extremely privileged. I grew up with two parents that didn't get divorced, that loved me, that took care of me. I went to a great school. I had everything. I went to activities. I went to summer camp. I grew up a very blessed and privileged life. And at the same time, I had a really difficult childhood, which is something that it's taken me a really long time to acknowledge because of all the privilege that I've had in my life. I gaslit myself into believing that I didn't endure any hardship as a child. And this is a part of the journey of what led me to my spiritual awakening and all of these things. But essentially, being back home and being in my hometown, it's so interesting how much environment can affect your internal state. I got so depressed the few months that I stayed home. I just felt like all of these experiences and all of these things that I've had in my life and like moving to LA and working in Hollywood and having this amazing adventure and all of these things. When I came back home, it almost felt like all of that was a fever dream and that it was right back to square one. I felt like the walls closing in, like all of the best years are behind me and possibility is over. And it was just like, so I spent a few months really going through it, really struggling. I still didn't know what my purpose was. I still didn't really know what I was wanting to build, what I was wanting to do. I didn't know where I was going to live. Like I was just like, fuck, like what's going on? Fast forward, the download came. And now in retrospect, looking back, I'm like, duh. But the idea for AmandaFest started to materialize. And I had been thinking about it and I had been dreaming about it. I was like, okay, I'm not exactly 100% clear on what it is, but I know I love travel and I know I love music and I know I love supporting people and I know I love play and connection and authenticity and blah, blah, blah. And so I'm going to be really fucking honest with you guys. I'm still figuring it out. The dream hasn't fully fleshed itself out for me yet, and I've decided to start taking action towards building the base layer of what I know is to come. And so that's the intention of this podcast as well, right? It's like to inspire and empower people to take aligned action towards their dream lives, whatever that looks like for you. When I decided I was going to leave the job back in December of 2023, January of 2024, I hired a mindset coach because that's when my brain started going, oh shit, if I leave this job, what am I going to do? I've always only imagined working in entertainment. Like, I don't even know what is what. And I had the fucking hardest time. This mindset coach would take me through exercises and she would ask me, like, what does your dream day look like? This, that, like, whatever. And I struggled so hard with the clarity on, like, what do I want? Because I also realized I never asked myself, what do I want? Because of my trauma and because of all the things that have happened in my life, I was hiding behind other people's dreams and goals and visions because I was afraid of even asking myself the question of what do I want? And so looping it all the way back, we're coming back to me stepping into building AmandaFest, all this. Before you even start to decide, I want to start pursuing my dream, you have to get clear on what do I want? And in order to get clear on what you want, you have to ask yourself those questions and you have to start tuning in and you have to start really being honest with yourself about what is going on in your world and in your life. And I think a recurring theme for me over and over and over again has just been like, I'm having an experience and then I am telling myself a story about the experience that I'm in. And sometimes it's not always the same. For instance, my childhood, I didn't have the best relationship with my parents all the time. I had some really hard shit that I had to move through. And when I graduated high school and went to college, I wanted to pretend like none of that ever happened. And so what happened is when I went to college, I don't even remember college. I was talking to my college roommate this past weekend, and she was like, I was so depressed and in such a bad place during college because now in retrospect thinking about it, I think it was just like all of the trauma and all of the things that I just didn't acknowledge and didn't give space to and numb, suppressed, avoided, ignored my whole childhood. All of a sudden it was in front of me, and instead of facing it, I just literally went under the covers and wanted to hide. I went on antidepressants at that time too for a little bit. I was drinking a lot. I was very reckless and promiscuous and just doing anything and everything I could to avoid feeling, um, which is sad, which is really, really sad in looking back on it. And so when I moved to California, so I did 3 years in Boston. I went to school at Emerson in Boston. I studied acting. My last semester of school, my school had a semester abroad program in LA. And I was like, well, I'll never live in LA. But let me just go there and see what's up. And the minute I went to LA, like, again, going back to environment being so fucking powerful. The second I landed in LA, I felt expansive. I felt like, oh my God, like possibility, all of these things. And LA really unlocked something within me. But the first few years I was in LA, I was still on my like numb, suppress, avoid train. So now I wasn't depressed, like quote unquote depressed, like I wasn't hiding, in my bed, like under the covers, but I was still drinking a lot. I was not connected. I was spending time with people that weren't of integrity. I was very promiscuous. I was very career driven and oriented, but in an unhealthy way. So like my first couple years in California, I was working at a talent agency and I was partying all the fucking time, like constantly. I was drinking every single day. All I was doing was going to work and going to drinks. And I was like, it was fun, like at the time. But again, looking back on it, I'm looking back on the types of people that I was hanging out with and the types of activities we were participating in and the men that I was allowing in my physical space. And I look back and I have so much compassion for that version of myself because she was so not fucking present. So fast forward to my spiritual evolution. I went on a trip to Thailand in 2017, and that is what I mark as the catalyst of my entire spiritual awakening. I would say my spiritual awakening has a couple of different markers that were really, really, really pivotal. Like things shifted pretty dramatically after each of these. So I went to Thailand with 2 friends. One was my best friend at the time who lived in Los Angeles, and the other one was a childhood friend from summer camp who was based in New York City. And at this point, so remember I went to LA for my final semester of college. I wasn't sure if I was going to stay in LA because for me, going back again to like locations lighting you up and having such a huge impact on how you feel, New York was always my entire life from the day I can remember remembering things. I always hated South Florida and I always loved New York. Everyone that knows me, my fucking bar mitzvah theme was New York City. I was obsessed with Broadway. I was obsessed with like New York just made me feel alive. It made me feel like anything was possible. And even as a kid, I always held on to that hope. I hated where I was, but I knew that there was something better out there because I experienced it. So, cut to, I'm on this trip in Thailand with my LA friend and my New York friend. LA friend is a new friend who is a direct reflection of the way in which I was showing up at that period of my life, which was not of my highest integrity. And my New York friend was somebody who like knew the real me. She knew me from when we were kids, from when we went to summer camp. She knew who I was. She knew my values. She knew my family. Like she knew who I was. And so we go on this trip and all this shit unfolds. First of all, immediately, my New York friend hates my LA friend. Not even just that, but she told me this after. She was just confused because this girl was such a direct opposition to like who I was and what my values were, that it was like when she met my LA friend, she was concerned that that's what I've become. And then she spent some time with me and she was like, okay, so you're not that, but you're friends with that? I'm confused. I don't understand. So this goes into another really big lesson of how important the people that you spend time with are in shaping who you become. Show me your 5 best friends and I'll show you who you are, right? So essentially this trip, it was my first grown-up trip. It was my first international trip that I've done as an adult. I'd always been really scared to do things like that. But on top of it being that, it was just such a fucking culture shock. Seeing the way other people live, seeing the way other people show up, seeing such a different type of society than Western culture really just threw me for a fucking loop. But also throughout this trip, there was a lot of like things and lessons that I was learning within the dynamics of these two girlfriends. So very, very long story short, the trip is coming to an end. I cut ties with my LA girlfriend and decide that this is no longer a nourishing relationship. Like the main lesson that I had learned, there were 2 big things. One was that you become the 5 people you spend the most time with. And then also on that trip was when I first recognized that I wasn't living intentionally. I realized that everything that I was doing, going to work constantly, drinking all the time, spending time with certain people, being promiscuous and all of these things, I was like, I was living in such a state of disconnection and dissociation, and I was letting my life just happen to me. I wasn't guiding the ship. And so when I came back from that trip, I made some really massive shifts. I broke up with my best friend at the time. I stopped, I can't even say dating, but I was like hooking up with this guy for over a year that was completely not aligned. And I knew it and he knew it. And we just were continuing down this super unhealthy pattern. So I cut ties with that friend. I cut ties with him. My roommate at the time, it wasn't a very healthy situation towards the end. It was very codependent and there was just a lot of energy that needed shifting. So 3 of my closest people that I was spending the most time with, I was like, we need to make some big shifts and changes here. And that's when I started asking myself, if I met me at a bar right now, I would think I'm so boring. I would be so not interesting because, again, all I was doing was going to work and going to drinks. I didn't do anything outside of work. And then I remembered, I was like, okay, but when I was a kid, I was an activities girl, right? I was at dance all the time. I was doing theater. I had a packed schedule of things that were nourishing and exciting and fun. And so I started to think about, okay, what used to be fun for me? Dance. So that's when I started pole dancing. I was like, cool. Even though I ended things with all these people in my life, it was really sad. And especially ending something with a semi-romantic partner, like there was some, it was hard. It was really difficult. And also at the time, cutting ties with someone that you're seeing when you're the one cutting it, I knew that I was going to have to be the one to uphold that. And so when I got sad or when I got lonely or when I, was feeling frisky, whatever it was, like I knew that I had to uphold not reaching out to him. And so I was like, great, I need to like occupy myself so that I'm not going to be sitting at home alone, sad at night, and feel like I want to text him. And so this is how dance came into my life. So then I started with pole dancing, and it was great. I would go a few times a week. I started recognizing different people in the class. I would make friends with the teacher. I loved learning a new skill. So that unlocked so much for me. It started unlocking the idea of community, the idea of doing a creative outlet. Like, it was fun, it was sexy, it was sensual. The idea of building community, learning a new skill, connecting to my body, and it it was amazing. It was so good. So that was like one pillar, was 2017 Thailand, spiritual awakening. We're starting to make these shifts. We're starting to bring more intentionality to our life. We're starting to be aware of how impactful the people that we choose to surround ourselves are. I will say also, around this time, this is when I decided that I wanted to work with this actor, because again, I felt the same way, where I was like, he was such a good person, right? The way that he showed up in the world was so of integrity that I was like, wow, if I get to spend every single minute of every single day with somebody like this, if I even become slightly like this, like I'm in a good place. So a huge part of why I decided to take that job and spend those 4 years working with this person was because of that. And it was like, again, it's such a master class in how to be a good human. So we're fast forwarding now. So now life's getting good. It's getting fun. It's getting juicy. We're getting more connected. We're starting to do dance. We're doing yoga. We're being aware of who we're hanging out with, who we're spending time with. We're like, we're getting there. We're getting there, right? I think at this time too, though, I was still partying, and I was still, a little promiscuous and this and that and whatever. And we're on track. We're on track. Then I would say the next pivotal thing that came to was in 2020. So pandemic starts in March, we know. I went back home for a few months, spent some time with my family. That was really healing as well, to get to sort of redo my childhood almost. We actually all really got along pretty well. So I was down in South Florida for 4 months, and it was actually a really beautiful experience. I know it was a very hard time for many people, so I tend to feel bad saying that the pandemic was a positive experience for me, but it was in that way. I really got to reconnect with my family. We did dinner every night together, which we never did when I was a kid. My sister is 6 years younger than me, so we actually didn't really grow up together. And me, my brother, and my sister all came home for those 4 months of the pandemic, those first 4 months. So that was really nice. But fast forward, by September of 2020, I ended up going back to LA. And in the midst of all of this, I had a bit of a rekindling of a relationship that was really, really, really toxic. And I had probably the biggest heartbreak of my whole life in 2020, like pretty intense. But heartbreak was what catalyzed me into therapy and ecstatic dance, because I was feeling so sad and so depressed and so hurt and like broken. I was like, how do I not feel like this? What can I do? And so I started cognitive behavioral talk therapy, and then I started going to ecstatic dance every single Sunday for like years. I was obsessed. And I've talked about ecstatic dance a bunch of times on this podcast, but for those who don't know, ecstatic dance is a sober, intentional space with the intention of guiding people through movement journeys. So it's a dance party. I mean, that's what it is. So there's a DJ, there's music, there's dancing. There's no speaking on the dance floor. The whole intention of it is to move through whatever you're going through physically through your body. So you're using somatic experiencing and dance and movement to like release and let go and move through like whatever it is. It started changing my whole world. Like, truly, this practice alone has been the most healing modality I've ever found. And there's so many different ways that you can heal. But for me, I was like, wow, connecting to my fucking body and moving, because I was always somebody who intellectualized my emotions. So getting to physically get into my body, it was just unreal, unbelievable. So somatic, ecstatic dance is going on. We're in therapy, we're healing. In this time period, I end up having a really intense falling out with my mom. Um, you know, again, going back to the childhood thing, it's like we can gaslight ourselves into forgetting any of the hardships that we endured as children. And for me, with my mom, I felt like for years, right? Because remember, I went home for the pandemic. I was good. Like me and my mom were good. And if you saw us on Instagram, you'd be like, oh my God, they have such a great relationship. But for many, many years of my adult life, my relationship with my mom felt pretty surface level because there was so much shit underneath that we just brushed under the rug, right? It's not like we ever had these deep conversations and healed from things that we moved through and hurts and pains. Like we just truly were like shoved it under the rug, wanted to pretend like it didn't happen and like, let's go be a happy family. Yay. But as I'm starting my healing journey, right? I'm starting my movement practices and my cognitive behavioral therapy. I'm starting to realize there's a lot of shit that I haven't acknowledged in my life. Right. And remember, by the way, it's this breakup that was the catalyst for all this. So I'm like, as horrible as that breakup was, I'm like, yo, I would never be where I am today if that didn't happen. So just a reminder that if you're going through hard times, that if you're experiencing intensity in your life, just always try to think about future you and how all of this is a part of the fucking journey, right? So my mom and I had this really intense falling out, almost to the point where I wasn't sure if I was going to have a relationship with my family at all. Like it got so, so intense that there was a really, really, really intense day where it was just like we were deciding whether or not we were going to have a relationship, period. I also was thinking about like, if I had cut ties with my mom, I couldn't have a relationship with my dad anymore. My relationship with my siblings would have been strained. I wouldn't be able to come home to the house anymore, so I wouldn't be able to see any of my grandparents anymore. So this was a very emotional, really difficult, challenging time. And at that time, I decided, because again, like remember, I'm coming back online. I'm recognizing my value. I'm recognizing my worth. I'm recognizing that I don't deserve to be treated this way, this, that, the other, whatever. And by the way, all of this to say, I love my mom deeply and dearly. And none of this was her fault. This was all just relationship shit, right? Like all of us have it. And so at that time, I decided that I was going to take some space from my relationship with my mom. So we essentially really didn't talk for like, I want to say a year, like here and there, cordial, whatever. But like I used to call my mom every single day. We'd talk on the phone, and I was like, I needed some real space to heal and to process and to be on my own journey before I even knew if I was willing to reopen that relationship. So that was tough. But that was a catalyst, right? So we got all these fucking little catalysts. So this like breakup with my mom or pause with my mom situation catalyzed me into starting to go to personal development workshops. So right after that, because I was so sad and so upset, I was feeling so lost. I was like, I don't know what to do. I'm so upset that this is happening. And so that really catalyzed me into really starting this personal development journey. So I started going to workshops, learning as much as I could about healing myself, healing my relationships with myself, understanding myself on a deeper level so that I could go back and heal my relationships with others, because that's really what it comes down to. You could sit there all you want and try to have healthy relationships, but at the end of the day, if you're noticing a pattern of unhealthy relationships in your life, it's typically tied to an unhealthy relationship with yourself, right? So the next massive pivotal point in my personal development journey was when I started working with plant medicine. And this was, I believe, in like, I want to say it was like February of 2022. This was the fucking like, this changed everything. This changed everything. Mind you, my whole entire friend group, my whole entire like activities changed in 2020. So 2020, now I have all these super spiritually connected friends. I'm having these really deep conversations. I'm in therapy. I'm moving my body. I'm like, we're like trending. And then I hit like a roadblock with my mom. And then I'm like, okay, next. So I had been around people for, at that point, 2 years who were talking about mushrooms, and they were talking about like MDMA therapy, and they're talking about ayahuasca and plant medicines and rapé and all of these different things. And I, at that time, was just like, that I'm not interested in that. You know, I was pretty straight edge most of my life. Like I drank a little bit, I smoked a little bit of weed, but like in 2017, things started shifting, you know, psychedelics at festivals here and there or whatever, but I had never sat intentionally in a plant medicine ceremony and really been like, okay, I'm gonna fucking dive into my shit and like, you know, that just, I wasn't, I was like, cool that you guys do that. I'm not interested. Fast forward, fast forward, fast forward. Situation with my mom goes down. I'm in all of these personal development classes. I get this intuitive ping from the universe, and I was just like, oh, I'm ready. Because also that was another thing that people had told me. They were like, don't just do plant medicine. Plant medicine is something that you need to feel called to. And if you don't feel the call, don't do it. So I felt the call. The call came, the ping came, I got it. And literally, again, like within hours of the ping coming, I was texting a friend. And I was like, what are you doing this weekend? She's like, oh, I'm sitting in ceremony, blah, blah. I end up getting invited to my first plant medicine ceremony very, very, very soon after I had announced to the universe that I was ready for it. And that ceremony fucking rocked my world, man. The biggest takeaway from that experience was I recognized in that moment, so now we're in February of 2022, I recognized in that moment that I had been disconnected and dissociated from my body since I was a little kid. And it brought me right back to a specific moment in which that happened, when shit was hard, when things were intense, you know, there was screaming and yelling and all of these things happening in my childhood home, and I couldn't take it anymore. And so as a little kid, we create, you know, all of our unhealthy things that we do as adults come from protection mechanisms that we adopt as children. And so for me, being in a situation where I'm being yelled at and there's these things going on, and I was just like, I can't fucking be here anymore. So I just like, I went away and I stayed away. So then looking back on my whole childhood, I was really unhappy and like this and that. And like, I really didn't get happy unless I was in New York or until I moved to LA. There were moments of happiness for sure, but a lot of those moments were when I was in theater pretending to be other people, reading scripts and reading lines and living in someone else's world. There was so much like numb, suppress, avoid, distract going on my entire life up until this moment in 2022, which is literally why my whole MO and everything that I talk about and everything that I preach is all about connection. It's all about connection to self. It's all because I fucking get it. Because I was disconnected. I was disconnected for like the majority of my life. I was not present in my body. All of the things that maybe you guys are struggling with, they're just defense mechanisms, because when shit gets hard, when we don't have the proper tools to deal with things, when we don't understand what's going on, like we just need to survive, man. Like we just are trying to survive. So I came back home to my body like fully February 2022, and that's when my whole world rocked. So I was really afraid of working with plant medicine initially, because I was like, what if I step into the ceremony and the medicine shows me that I'm not in alignment with the life that I'm currently living, and it makes me change things? Like that was my fear. And because that was my fear going in, I guess my subconscious brain already knew that that's what the situation was, that I wasn't in alignment, right? Like it was time to make a shift. It was time to make a change. So from that point, you know, I've sat with a handful of different medicines since then, but basically that was like really, really, really big, was recognizing that I wasn't in alignment with the life that I was living. And okay, so now we're in February of 2022. So now I'm like working with this actor full time. I'm living my best life in LA. We're better than we were at the beginning, right? We're better than we were when we were totally disconnected. We're better than we were pre-Thailand. We're better than we were pre-Ecstatic dance. We're still like, I felt like at that point in my life, I was living between two worlds, right? I was like half in the super Hollywood scene with the celebrities and the, you know, the this and the that. And I was still grinding, working full time, like completely devoted towards building this other person's dream, this other person's life. I was happy doing that. Like that was one side of my life. And then the other side of my life is like I'd clock out there. I never clocked out, actually. I was working 24/7. But basically half of my life was this. And then half of my life was like I was dancing on the beach and I was going to drum circles and I was like singing Kumbaya. Like, you know, so I felt like I was living two lives. And then February of 2022, I started working with plant medicine. And then I was like, fuck, okay, it's time to make another shift. And this is when I recognized that I was no longer in alignment with the work that I was doing. I was starting to feel that. I wasn't 100% there yet. I resisted it for like a year, honestly, if I'm being like really transparent, because I started to recognize like that and this is through plant medicine, this is through therapy, this is through somatic movement, this is through dance, all these things. I had come to realize that I had some self-worth issues that I wasn't aware of. And one of those things was that I didn't feel like I was good enough to pursue my own dreams. I went to school for acting and I ended up pursuing something behind the scenes because on a deep level, I don't think that I felt like I was good enough to be on the stage. I was like, I'm good enough to like, be behind the scenes. And then once I started working behind the scenes, I was like, I even went even more behind the scenes. And I was like, let me hide behind somebody else. Let me hide behind somebody else's dream, somebody else's vision, and let me be their fucking cheerleader. And by the way, I love being people's cheerleaders. Don't get me wrong. Working in talent representation, working directly with talent, supporting other people, I love that. It brings me so much joy. And why can't I do that for myself? Why can't I step into my own power, know that I'm good enough, know that I am worthy of pursuing whatever it is that I want to pursue, and actually take action and pursue it? And so, wow, here we are. I didn't know how I was going to tell this story. I pulled the water card before because I was like, I don't even know what I'm going to do. And I guess it was just like, you're just going to flow, man. You're just going to flow right through it. So thank you all for bearing with me so far in this journey. But yeah, so basically February 2022, I come back online. I have all these realizations. I'm like, I'm not ready, but I'm ready. And I resisted it and I fought it and I sat with other medicines and it took me a really long time. And then finally, end of 2022. So I guess it wasn't even that long. It was a year. There was a year of this period of like, end of 2022. I have this conversation with my boss. We're like, I'm ready to step into something different, blah, blah, blah. We separate. And then January 2023 is when I start the journey of discovering what it is that I want to bring to this world. So we made it, guys. So here we are now in October of 2024. I got a day job, like whatever, that's just been the thing that's been paying the bills. But, the last 6-7 months, I've really been devoted towards building out my personal brand, content creation, this podcast. I've signed up for a variety of different courses where I'm building my business and I'm building like the base layer of what my offerings are going to be and how I'm going to support people in this space. My dream and goal is to combine my loves of travel, entertainment, and wellness. So I see visions of me speaking on stages and leading incredible retreats and having really fun events and just making personal development fucking fun. That's really what it comes down to. Because again, as you've heard with my whole journey and my whole story, like I've done a lot of work, I've done a lot of work on myself, but I also went through large portions of my life where I wasn't doing that work and it was showing up in my life in really unhealthy ways. And so I get it. I understand, people that are going out, that are drinking, that are living on autopilot, that feel stuck, that feel like they have to stay with a certain partner because of XYZ. Like I get it. Like I get it. And at the same time, I know I was brought here, one, to do all this work, to have all these experiences, to get to this point in my journey. I feel like I was brought here to heal my family lineage, to truly lead in this space and help people. And that's not hiding behind people. That's using my story, my power, my voice, and guiding others that are struggling with the same shit that I was struggling with. And it's scary and it's intense and I have no idea what I'm doing half the fucking time, but I'm just putting one foot in front of the other. I'm just taking steps. I'm just doing the fucking reps and I'm showing up. And this solo podcast is such a fucking testament of that, because I was so uncomfortable at the thought of doing this. I could very easily sit here. Obviously, I could chat and talk and blah, blah, but like the thought of going through my own personal story and really just laying it out there. And I was like, how do you even do that? But my friend told me recently, she was like, we are our own best case studies, right? So if we want to support people and help people and change the world and have massive impact, we are our own best case studies, looking at our own stories, looking at our lessons, looking at our life, like really taking that inventory. My biggest message from all of this is take some inventory. I don't know if you journal, if you whatever it is, even if you literally write down a timeline of your life and just fill in the dots of like, where was I in 2022? Who was I hanging out with? What was going on then? And just looking at it like objectively and thinking about where you're at now and taking that inventory right now. Who are the 5 people I'm spending the most time with? If you told me, let's talk about partnership for a second. I was dating somebody and you said to me, oh my God, you're starting to act so much like that person. If that is not a compliment, rethink your relationships, whether that's somebody that you're dating, whether that's your husband, whether that's your fiance, whether that's your best friend, whoever it is. If you're spending time with people that you do not want to have their qualities rub off on you, reevaluate. And if your family is toxic and you don't have a good relationship with them, I think my story is a really beautiful one of like, I'm so happy that I was able to heal that relationship with my mom. Oh, by the way, I forgot that part. So after the plant medicine journeys and all that, I actually was able to come to a place of forgiveness and compassion with my mom and my family. And I was actually able to go back and have these really deep conversations. And now I am in such a beautiful place with my family. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that I took the time and space to heal on my own. And I'm so grateful that they were open and receptive to having these deeper conversations to heal some of those wounds. And, I think that once you start your personal development journey, for me, I'll speak for myself. When I started my personal development journey, specifically talking about my relationship with my family, there was anger because I was gaslighting myself, pretending like I didn't have any struggles or any trauma. And then once I started my journey, I realized, oh shit, I did. And then I was upset. There was blame and there was anger and there was like, oh my God, how could you? You yelled at me when I was like whatever. The place that I had to arrive at was compassion, a place of compassion of like, listen, my mom had 2 children by the time she was the age I am now. She loves me with all of her heart. She's the best fucking mom in the whole entire world. But she was only able to do with what she had the tools to do with. And the same thing goes for my dad, and the same thing goes for my grandparents, and the same thing goes with any of your parents and family. Like, there are absolutely different circumstances. But if you have parents that genuinely loved you, that genuinely did the best that they could, it is actually physically impossible for somebody to show up for you 100% and meet all of your needs. It's not possible. So anybody that's saying that they had a perfect childhood and they have a great relationship with their parents is fucking bullshit, because there's shit. There's always shit. It doesn't have to be big, but there's always shit. There's always things. There's always hurt. And if you don't have the ability to communicate and actually deal with them and actually have emotionally mature conversations with your children, with your parents, these are the things that are going to help heal your lineage and help you actually have better relationships with your family. And I will say, again, I'm very, very, very lucky that my parents were receptive to these types of conversations, because I used to think that it was inevitable that everybody has parents. And that's always like, I know that that's not true. I know that so many adults do not have relationships with their family. They had extremely toxic childhoods and they never got the chance to heal that within themselves first, and then have the privilege of being able to go back and heal that with their parents. Like, all of that is an immense privilege. But if you have the opportunity, your parents are still alive, your parents are open and receptive, and your parents fucking love you, we can do a whole deep dive into that. But I didn't want to end the podcast without closing the loop on that part of the story. But as you can tell, there's a lot. I mean, I just did my entire life story in an hour. I don't know how I did that. I'm so grateful to have this platform. I'm so grateful to have people that are interested in what I'm sharing, that reach out to me and tell me that the posts that I put on social media or the podcasts that I'm sharing are shifting their perspective and are opening their mind and are inviting them to show up differently. Like, what? Wow. Oh my God. Wow. So, I think this is a really good place to close. I am so grateful for all of you guys. I'm so excited to watch this episode back in a few years and just see how far I've come since this moment, and knowing that starting this podcast and starting this business is going to be another marker on my spiritual evolution. I already know that it is. Upcoming, I'm turning 30 on November 11th. Right now it's October 12th. So in 1 month, I'm turning 30. In a few weeks, I am sitting with ayahuasca for the first time. I've sat with a variety of different plant medicines in the last couple of years. Ayahuasca has been calling me, and I know that this is about to be a really, really, really big and transformative journey. So I think the timing of all of this is pretty wild. I'm also in New York City right now, and I'm leaving to go to LA tomorrow morning for the first time since last year when I left. So there's lots happening. There's a lot of movement. There's a lot of shifts, and I'm just so grateful that I was able to hop on here and share this journey of my life so far. And I'm so excited to get to continue building this platform and do this work. If you haven't already, please subscribe, reach out to me. Like, would love to continue the conversations. Let me know if throughout this story, if there are any topics that you'd like me to do a separate episode on and dive deeper into. I likely will be doing these more often. This will be the only one that's my whole life story, but future ones we can dive deeper into some of these topics and really talk about all of the things. So I'm so grateful. Thank you all for being here today, and catch you on the next one.